This video is made for entertainment purposes only. My name is Marcus Webb, and in exactly 7 days, I'm going to die. I know this with absolute certainty. Not because of a terminal diagnosis. Not because of a threat from some cartel boss or rogue operative seeking revenge. I know it because 29 years ago, in a concrete room beneath a facility that doesn't officially exist, a creature that shouldn't exist told me so. And it laughed. I'm recording this now because once I'm gone, someone needs to know what really happened in November of 1995. Someone needs to understand that there are things in this world, ancient things, that know more about the fabric of reality than we ever will. And someone needs to hear the warning I ignored for nearly 3 decades. This is my confession. My testimony. My final report from beyond the clearance levels where truth becomes classified and reality becomes need to know. This is what happened when the CIA captured a Sasquatch. November 14, 1995. I was 32 years old and already burned out. 6 years with the agency had taught me things about human nature I wish I could forget. I'd spent 18 months in Central America doing things that would make your skin crawl. I'd perfected techniques that exist only in redacted documents, and the nightmares of men who'll never speak of what they endured. They didn't call it torture back then. We used cleaner words. Enhanced interrogation. Coercive questioning. Applied pressure techniques. But I knew what it was. And I was disturbingly good at it. I was at my apartment in McLean, Virginia, trying to drink away the memories of my last assignment, when the phone rang at 2:47 a.m. Not my regular line. The secure phone that only rang when something had gone catastrophically wrong or impossibly right. Webb. I answered without preamble. You're needed. Immediate mobilization. Helicopters landing on your building's roof in 12 minutes. The voice belonged to Deputy Director Hammond, my direct superior. His tone carried an edge I'd never heard before, not fear exactly, but something close. Uncertainty. What's the situation? Classified until your wheels up. Pack for 3 days. Rural environment. And Webb. He paused, and I heard him take a breath. Nothing in your training prepared you for this. Nothing prepared any of us. The line went dead. 11 minutes later, I was on the roof with a duffel bag, watching an unmarked Black Hawk descend through the pre-dawn darkness. No insignia. No identification numbers. Just flat black paint that seemed to swallow the city lights around us. I climbed aboard to find 2 other passengers. Dr. Raymond Chen, a linguist I'd worked with on a hostage situation in Pakistan, and Colonel Travis Brennan, an Army intelligence officer with a reputation for handling impossible situations. Neither made eye contact. Both looked like they'd seen something that fundamentally challenged their understanding of the world. You know what this is about? I asked Raymond once we were airborne, the chopper's noise forcing me to shout. He shook his head slowly. They showed me a recording. Audio only. I thought it was a hoax. Then they showed me something else. His hands trembled slightly. Marcus, I've studied 43 languages, including extinct ones. What I heard shouldn't be possible. What did you hear? Something that learned English by listening. Something that understands grammar instinctively but has a vocal structure that should make human speech impossible. He finally looked at me, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Something that's been watching us for a very, very long time. Colonel Brennan leaned forward, his weathered face grim. You're both here because you've got top-level clearance and you've dealt with situations that would break normal people. What you're about to see stays locked in your head until the day you die. No journals. No deathbed confessions. You take this to your grave, or you end up in one a lot sooner than expected. Are we clear? We nodded. Good. Because in about 90 minutes, you're going to meet something that will rewrite everything you think you know about this planet. We flew north. Far north. The sun rose as we crossed into Montana, painting the wilderness below in shades of gold and crimson. We passed over forests so dense and vast that you could hide an army in them and never find a trace. This was the America that existed before cities, before highways, before we convinced ourselves we'd mapped every inch of the continent. We landed at what looked like an abandoned mining operation, rusted equipment, collapsed structures, the whole stereotypical ghost town setup. But as the helicopter's rotors wound down, I noticed details that didn't fit. The fence was too new. The collapsed entrance to the main shaft had reinforced hydraulic supports barely concealed by artificial weathering. Motion sensors disguised as rocks. "Welcome to Site 17, Brennan said as we disembarked. "Officially, this is a decommissioned copper mine. The last surveyors left in 1974. According to every map and database, this location has been abandoned for 2 decades. "And unofficially?" I asked. "Unofficially, this is where we bring things that would cause worldwide panic if their existence became public knowledge." He led us toward the mine entrance, which began to hydraulically open as we approached. Site 17 has been operational since 1963. Over the years, it's housed Soviet defectors with information too sensitive for regular facilities, recovered technology from incidents the public will never know occurred, and biological specimens that shouldn't exist. The entrance yawned open, revealing an elevator large enough to fit a vehicle. We descended in silence, and I counted the seconds. 97 seconds of steady descent meant we were roughly 300 feet underground by the time the elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a scene that looked more like a hospital than a mine. White walls. Fluorescent lighting. The smell of disinfectant trying unsuccessfully to mask something else. Something organic and wild, like a zoo but worse. More primal. A woman in a white coat waited for us. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, according to her badge. Late 40s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd been dealing with an impossible situation for days without sleep. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming so quickly." Her voice was professionally calm, but her body language betrayed extreme stress. "I'm the senior biologist on site. What we have in containment has been here for 6 days, and in that time, it's answered no questions, made no requests, and shown no signs of cooperation or distress. It simply watches and listens." "You said it spoke," Raymond interjected. "On the recording. Once. 18 hours after capture. It spoke for exactly 4 minutes and 32 seconds, and hasn't said a word since." She began walking, and we followed through corridors that descended even deeper into the earth. "We've tried everything. Food, water, environmental changes, different personnel. Nothing. It's waiting." "Waiting for what?" I asked. Dr. Mitchell stopped at a reinforced door with a small observation window. "We think it's waiting for you, Mr. Webb." When it did speak, it asked for the one who knows pain. It described you physically. Height, build, the scar on your left forearm from the Medellin incident. It knew you were coming before we even called you. My blood went cold. "That's impossible. The decision to bring me in was made less than 3 hours ago." "Yes," she said simply. "Hence the problem." She stepped aside, and I looked through the observation window into the containment cell beyond. The creature sat on a concrete bench in the center of a room designed for maximum security and minimum comfort. The space was 20 feet square with walls of reinforced steel. Banks of lights blazed from every angle, eliminating shadows. 3 cameras covered every inch. The temperature was kept deliberately cold, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the monitor beside the door. And in the center of all that human engineering and paranoid security sat something that should not exist. It was massive. Even seated, it had to be over 7 feet tall. The body was humanoid but wrong, proportions that suggested incredible strength, shoulders too wide, arms too long. It was covered in dark reddish-brown hair that had an almost shaggy quality, thicker around the shoulders and chest. The face. God, the face was the worst part. It wasn't an ape. It wasn't human. It was something in between, or maybe something entirely different that only superficially resembled both. The brow was heavy, the jaw strong, but the eyes were disturbingly intelligent. They tracked movement with deliberate focus. They calculated. They understood. And as I watched, those eyes shifted to look directly at the observation window. Directly at me. It couldn't possibly see me through the one-way glass. The lighting in the corridor was too dim, the glass treated to prevent any view from inside the cell. But it knew I was there. It smiled. Not a grimace or a baring of teeth, but an actual smile. The expression was human enough to be recognizable and alien enough to be deeply, fundamentally wrong. Then it nodded once. A deliberate gesture of recognition. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "Yes," Dr. Mitchell said quietly. "That's the typical reaction." They briefed me in a conference room that smelled of stale coffee and fear. "The creature was captured 6 days ago by a team operating out of Missoula," Colonel Brennan began, pulling up photos on a projector screen. "Local ranger reported unusual activity near a restricted watershed area. Livestock mutilation patterns that didn't match known predators, massive tree breaks at heights no bear could reach, and footprints. Lots of footprints." The photos showed tracks that were unmistakably humanoid. 17 inches long, 6 inches wide, with 5 distinct toes. Depth impressions suggested something weighing between 600 and 800 pounds. "We've had a division monitoring Sasquatch reports since 1967, Brennan continued. "Most are hoaxes, misidentifications, or bullshit. But over the decades, certain patterns emerged. Consistent geographic hotspots. Behavioral profiles that remained stable across decades and thousands of miles. Biological evidence that didn't match any known species." "You knew they were real," I said. "The government's known all along." "We suspected." Big difference. Until 6 days ago, we had no definitive proof. Then a team got lucky, or unlucky, depending on your perspective. The creature was foraging near a game trail. They hit it with enough tranquilizer to drop an elephant. "How did you transport it?" "With extreme difficulty and 3 broken bones among the recovery team. Even sedated, it's extraordinarily strong. We had to use industrial restraints and a cargo helicopter. It regained consciousness during transport. The pilot said he heard it, laughing. Like it found the whole situation amusing." Dr. Mitchell took over, pulling up medical scans. "We've run every test we can without invasive procedures. The biology is fascinating. It's definitely a primate. Shares approximately 96.4% of its DNA with humans. For reference, we share 98.8% with chimpanzees. This thing is evolutionarily somewhere between a Homo erectus and modern humans, but the divergence happened at least 2 million years ago. It's not a missing link. It's a parallel branch. And it speaks English," Raymond added, his academic excitement barely contained despite the bizarre circumstances. When it spoke, the language pattern suggested at least 10 years of listening to human speech, maybe more. It makes grammatical errors consistent with someone learning English as a second language, but the vocabulary is extensive. It understands abstract concepts. Time, death, purpose. "What exactly did it say?" I asked. Dr. Mitchell pressed a button, and speakers crackled to life with a recording. The voice that emerged was like nothing I'd ever heard. Deep, resonant, with an almost harmonic quality that suggested a vocal structure fundamentally different from human anatomy. But the words, despite a heavy accent and unusual pronunciation, were unmistakably English. "You bring the wrong people. Scientists ask questions with no truth. Soldiers think with fear. You need the one who knows pain. The one who takes pain from others and carries it. He is coming. He will ask his questions. I will give him his answer. But the answer is not what he seeks. The answer is when. When he ends. When his breath stops. When his heart is silent. I see it. I see the day. I will tell him, and he will know I speak true, and he will understand. You are children. You know nothing of the world you walk upon. Nothing of what watches. Nothing of what waits." The recording ended. The room was silent for a long moment. "That was 48 hours ago," Brennan said. "Since then, nothing. It eats when we provide food. It uses the toilet facilities, properly, I might add, which was deeply disturbing to observe. It exercises. It watches the door. And it waits." "Waits for me," I said. "Yes. And you want me to interrogate it. Extract information, how many of them there are, where they live, what they want." That's exactly what we want, Brennan confirmed. You're the best we have at breaking subjects who don't want to talk. You've made career terrorists weep and beg. You've extracted intelligence from people trained to die before revealing secrets. If anyone can get answers from this thing, it's you. I looked at the faces around the table. Scientists, soldiers, intelligence officers, all of them looking at me with expectation and something else. Relief that they didn't have to be the one going into that room. There's something you're not telling me, I said. That message on the recording. It's not just waiting to talk. It's waiting to tell me when I'm going to die. That's the answer it mentioned. Why would I walk into a room to hear that? Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. Because if it can accurately predict your death, and we have reason to believe it can, then it possesses knowledge that could revolutionize everything we understand about time, causality, consciousness. This isn't just a biological specimen, Mr. Webb. This is a window into something profound. Something that could change the entire trajectory of human understanding. Or it's psychological warfare, I countered. Tell me a date, let me obsess over it, watch me destroy myself with fear. I've used similar tactics. Plant an idea in someone's head and let it metastasize. Possibly, Colonel Brennan acknowledged. But are you willing to bet your sanity on that assumption? Because here's what we know for certain. That thing has demonstrated knowledge it should not possess. It knew you were coming. It described you with details that aren't in any public record. It's playing a game with rules we don't understand, and we need to know what those rules are. He slid a document across the table toward me. This is a presidential level. Authorization for whatever means you deem necessary to extract information. Enhanced interrogation is approved. You have complete operational freedom. Make it talk, Webb. Find out what it knows and how it knows it. Because if there are more of these things out there, watching us, studying us, predicting our actions, we need to know what we're dealing with. I stared at the document, at the presidential seal, at the signatures authorizing actions that would be war crimes if applied to human subjects. And if it really does tell me the day I die? I asked quietly. Then you'll have to decide whether knowledge is worth the burden of certainty. I spent 2 hours preparing. Not with equipment or strategy. I'd done enough interrogations to know that technique mattered less than psychology. Instead, I studied everything they had on the creature. Video footage of its capture. Medical data. Behavioral observations. The linguistic analysis Raymond had compiled. But mostly, I watched it through the monitors. Watched how it moved. How it breathed. How it occasionally tilted its head as if listening to sounds beyond human hearing range. It never showed distress. Never paced like a caged animal. It simply existed in that cell with a patience that suggested confinement meant nothing to it. Like it had all the time in the world. Or like it knew exactly how long it would be there. At 1,600 hours, I entered the anteroom that connected to the containment cell. Dr. Mitchell was there with 2 guards carrying weapons I didn't recognize. Some kind of high-powered tranquilizer system with enough redundancy to suggest they'd learned from the first capture. "You'll be alone with it," she said. "We'll have audio and visual monitoring, but the cell is designed to be escape-proof. Once you're inside, we can't extract you quickly if something goes wrong. There's a panic button on the wall near the door. Press it and the room floods with aerosolized sedative. You'll go down too, but you'll wake up. Probably. Reassuring. Mr. Webb, I need you to understand something." She looked at me with the intensity of someone delivering a warning they knew would be ignored. "That creature has been compliant so far, but we don't know its limits. It could kill you before we could intervene. If you feel threatened." I've sat across from men who've tortured children, who've burned villages, who've committed atrocities that haunt me every night. I checked the small recording device they'd given me, backup audio in case the main systems failed. I think I can handle one oversized primate with a philosophy degree. "That's exactly the attitude that gets people killed," she said quietly. "Underestimating what you don't understand." She was right, of course. But I'd built a career on walking into rooms where death was a possibility and coming out with information. This was just another room. Another subject. Except subjects didn't usually predict the exact date of your death. I pushed that thought aside and nodded to the guards. Open it. The door unsealed with a hiss of hydraulics. I stepped through, and it closed behind me with the finality of a tomb ceiling. The creature sat exactly as it had before, motionless on the concrete bench. Up close, it was even more imposing. The smell hit me first, not unpleasant, but distinctly organic. Like a forest after rain, mixed with musk and something else I couldn't identify. Alien. Its eyes tracked me as I walked to the metal chair positioned 15 feet away, the maximum distance the room allowed while still being conversational. I sat down, maintaining eye contact, using every technique I'd learned for establishing dominance in an interrogation setting. The creature watched me with an expression that might have been amusement. "My name is Marcus Webb," I began, voice steady and authoritative. "I'm here to ask you some questions. You're going to answer them. How cooperative you are will determine how comfortable your stay here becomes. Do you understand?" Silence. "You spoke before. You asked for me specifically. I'm here now. So talk." Nothing. It just stared at me with those disturbingly intelligent eyes. I'd expected this. First rule of interrogation: subjects often test you with silence. They want to see if you'll break the quiet with nervousness or anger. I was prepared to sit there for hours if necessary. But then it spoke, and every preparation I'd made became worthless. "You bring papers with presidential words. You bring permissions to cause pain. You think authority gives you power in this room." The voice was even more unsettling in person, that deep, resonant quality that seemed to vibrate in your chest. "But you have no power here, Marcus Webb. You never did." The fact that it knew about the authorization documents I'd only been shown an hour ago in a secure room, sent ice through my veins. "How do you know that?" I demanded. "I know many things. I know you dream of a boy with dark eyes. You see him when you sleep. He screams words you cannot understand. He burns. This dream comes 3 nights from 7. You wake and drink until the memory softens." It tilted its head, studying my reaction. "I know you have killed 4 men with your hands. 13 with weapons. You remember each one. You count them when you think no one watches." My mouth went dry. The dream. I'd never told anyone about the dream. It was from Guatemala, a mission that officially never happened. A village that got caught in crossfire. A boy who... "Stop," I said, but my voice came out weaker than intended. "I know you have sister. Sarah. You have not spoken to her in 3 years, 2 months, 18 days. She called on your birthday. You let machine answer. She cried and asked why you hate her. You do not hate her. You fear she will see what you have become. Stop. I know that in 7 days, you will die." The room felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. My heart hammered against my ribs. "What?" I whispered. The creature leaned forward slightly, and I saw something in its expression that wasn't quite human but unmistakably recognizable. Pity. November 21st, 1995. 11:47 in the evening. "You will die, Marcus Webb. Your heart will stop. Your breath will end. The thing you called you will cease to exist in the form you understand." I stood up so fast the chair screeched against the concrete. "You're lying. This is a trick. Psychological manipulation." "Is it?" The creature remained seated, calm. "You know interrogation. You know minds. You see truth and lies like others see colors. Look at me, Marcus Webb. Listen to your instincts that have kept you alive through dark places and darker work. Do I lie?" And that was the horror of it. Every sense I'd honed over years of reading people, of detecting deception, of knowing when someone was playing games. All of it told me the same thing. It was telling the truth. Or at least, it believed absolutely that it was telling the truth. "How?" My voice came out hoarse. "How could you possibly know that?" Because I see. Not with eyes. Not with thoughts. I see the shape of things. The pattern of what comes. Your people live in the now. You remember the past. You fear the future. But you do not see it. You are blind to the path you walk until you have already walked it. That's impossible. The future isn't fixed. We have choice, free will. Do you? It made a sound that might have been a laugh, a deep, rumbling noise that raised the hair on the back of my neck. Did you choose to come to this room? You think yes. But you were always going to come. I saw it days before your superiors made the call. The shape of events flows like water finding its path. You believe you choose the path. But the path was already there. You only walk it. I backed toward the wall, my training warring with primal fear. You're saying everything is predetermined. That we have no control. I say you have the control you were always going to have. You make the choices you were always going to make. The shape does not change because you observe it. You are part of the shape. It stood then, rising to its full height, easily 7.5 feet tall. The guards outside shouted something, but the creature ignored them. You want to know about my people. How many? Where we hide. What we want. These are the questions you were sent to ask. Yes, I managed. I will answer. Because I want you to know. I want you to carry this knowledge for the 7 days you have remaining. I want you to understand what your people do not see. It moved closer, and every instinct screamed at me to hit the panic button. But I was frozen, not with fear exactly, but with the terrible certainty that running wouldn't matter. If it wanted me dead, I was already dead. The shape was already set. We are old, it said, stopping just beyond arm's reach. Older than your civilization. Older than your cities and roads and borders. We were here when your ancestors crossed the ice bridge. We watched your tribes grow and spread. We saw you build and burn and build again. We are the older brothers you forgot existed. How many? I asked, clinging to professionalism like a lifeline. Fewer than you fear. More than you can find. We number in the hundreds now. Once, thousands. Once, many thousands. But the world grew small. Your people grew many. The forests fell. The wild places died. We faded with them. Where do you live? In the spaces between your maps. In the places you mark as empty wilderness and forget to visit. In the deep valleys and high mountains where your roads do not reach and your satellites see only trees. It paused. We live in the world you destroyed and abandoned. What do you want? To be forgotten. To be left alone. To die in peace as our time ends. The creature's expression shifted to something unbearably sad. But your kind cannot leave things alone. You must catalog, classify, control. You found me because one of your young ones put machines in the forest. Cameras that see in darkness. I was careless. I grew tired of hiding. And now I am here, and the shape of what comes changes. What do you mean? Your leaders will want to study us, find us, capture more. They will send hunters into the wild places with your machines and your weapons. They will find some of us. Not all. Never all. But enough. Enough to disturb the ending we sought. It looked toward the cameras, toward the people watching beyond the glass. And in their fear and curiosity, they will hasten their own ending. What are you talking about? What ending? The creature turned back to me, and its eyes held depths of sorrow that seemed impossibly ancient. The world changes, Marcus Webb. Grows hot. Grows angry. The ice melts. The waters rise. The storms strengthen. The forests burn. Your people see these things and argue about causes and solutions, but you do not see the shape of what comes. You are blind to the path you walk. Climate change, I said. You're talking about climate change. I am talking about ending. Not the end, ending. The long collapse. The slow dying. It has begun already. Your people will suffer in ways you cannot imagine. In 50 years, the world will be a place of hunger and thirst and desperate war. In 100 years, half of your cities will be underwater. In 200 years, it paused. We will likely all be gone by then. Your people and mine. You can't know that. You can't see that far. I see far enough. And I know this, 7 days from now, your heart stops. Not from violence. Not from disease you carry now. From choice. My blood turned to ice. What choice? You will make it when the time comes. You will understand then what I tell you now. Some deaths are gentler than the living that follows. The creature moved back to its bench and sat with a finality that suggested the conversation was ending. You will leave this room. You will report my words. Your superiors will argue about what to do. They will decide to hunt my people. They will expand their search. They will find 3 more of us within 2 years. They will kill 1 who fights. They will cage 2 who do not. How can you possibly? And in 7 days, you will make your choice. You will understand then that I gave you a gift. The gift of knowing. The gift of preparation. The gift of seeing the shape before you reach it. This is insane. You're describing predetermination, prophecy, fortune-telling. I describe what is. You may call it what you wish. It closed its eyes. I am tired now. I will not speak more. You have your answers. They will not satisfy your superiors. They will send you back tomorrow and the day after. I will not speak then. I have said what needed saying. Wait. You can't just. November 21st, 11:47 p.m. 7 days from now. It opened one eye to look at me. I am sorry, Marcus Webb. You are not a good man, but you are not the worst of your kind. You deserved more time. But the shape does not change because of deserving. And then it was silent. I stood there for another 10 minutes, asking questions, demanding answers, using every technique I knew to get it to engage. Nothing worked. It sat with eyes closed, breathing slowly, as still as a statue. Finally, I hit the button to signal I was done. The door opened, and I stumbled out into the anteroom where Dr. Mitchell and Colonel Brennan waited with expressions of shock. "Did you get that?" I asked hoarsely. "Did the recording work?" "Every word," Brennan confirmed. "Webb, what it said about 7 days. November 21st, 11:47 p.m. I looked at him with what must have been wild eyes. "It told me when I'm going to die." "It's psychological warfare," Dr. Mitchell said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's trying to destabilize you, make you." It knew about my sister, about calls and conversations that happened months ago. It knew about documents I saw an hour ago. It described my dreams. I was shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. How could it know any of that? No one had an answer. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. They sent me back into that room each day. Each time, the creature remained silent. It would open its eyes, look at me with that expression of ancient pity, and say nothing. Once, it held up 4 fingers. Then 3. Then 2. Counting down the days I had left. The psychological impact was exactly what you'd expect. I couldn't sleep. When I did, the nightmares were worse. I started seeing patterns everywhere. Numerology in license plates, hidden meanings in random conversations, omens in the flight patterns of birds. Dr. Mitchell brought in a psychiatrist who specialized in hostile captivity situations. The session lasted 20 minutes before I walked out. What was he going to tell me? That an 8-foot-tall cryptid predicting my death was just stress? That I should practice mindfulness? Raymond Chen tried a different approach. He sat with me in the facility's break room on day 3, spreading out notes covered in linguistic analysis. "I've been studying the speech patterns," he said. "The grammar structures suggest a language that's agglutinative, similar to Turkish or Finnish, but with phonemic elements I've never encountered. The way it learned English implies cognitive abilities that rival or exceed human intelligence. Get to the point, Raymond. The point is that this creature is demonstrably more intelligent than we are. Its brain structure, according to the MRI scans, shows development in areas we don't even fully understand in human neurology. What if... He hesitated. What if it really can perceive time differently? What if that's not supernatural prophecy, but rather a natural ability we simply don't possess? You're saying it can see the future. I'm saying maybe future is the wrong word. Maybe it perceives probability with such accuracy that it amounts to the same thing. Like a chess computer that can calculate millions of moves ahead. To its opponent, its predictions seem magical. But it's just processing information at a level we can't match. That doesn't help me, Raymond. Whether it's magic or supercomputing, the result is the same. In 4 days, I'm supposed to die. Then prove it wrong. Make different choices. If you know the date, you can avoid it. Stay in a safe location. Don't travel. Don't take risks. It said my death would come from a choice. What if trying to avoid it is the choice that leads to it? Raymond had no answer for that. Colonel Brennan's approach was more pragmatic. On the evening of day 4, he found me in my quarters, a small room in the facility's staff section where I'd been essentially confined since the interrogation began. We've analyzed everything it said, he began without preamble. The predictions about our operations, hunting for more specimens, finding 3 within 2 years, we can prevent that. We can shut down the search. Bury this whole thing so deep it never sees daylight again. Will you? I asked. His silence was answer enough. You're going to do exactly what it said you would do. You're going to hunt them. Study them. Cage them. We have to, Brennan said, and he actually sounded regretful. If these things exist, if they have abilities we don't understand, we need to know more. For national security. For scientific advancement. For all the reasons that make us predictable, I finished. It knew you'd make this choice because you're incapable of making any other. The shape of events flows like water finding its path. What's that supposed to mean? Something it said. About how we think we have choices, but we always make the ones we were going to make. I laughed bitterly. Free will is just a story we tell ourselves to feel better about being predictable. That's fatalistic bullshit. Is it? Prove me wrong. Don't hunt them. Let this one go. Walk away and forget this ever happened. Brennan looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I can't do that. Because you choose not to, or because you were always going to make that choice? He left without answering. November 20th arrived like an executioner's footsteps. I'd been released from Site 17 the previous day with a packet of non-disclosure agreements thick enough to stop a bullet and threats dire enough to ensure I'd never speak about what I'd witnessed. They offered psychiatric support, monitoring, even a generous compensation package for my consulting services. I signed everything, took everything, and drove back to my apartment in McLean feeling like a man walking toward a cliff edge in the dark. The facility had done one final interview before my release. Dr. Mitchell, Raymond, and Brennan together, recording everything for posterity or legal protection. I wasn't sure which. For the record, Brennan had said, do you believe the subject's prediction about your death? I'd sat there in that sterile conference room, surrounded by people who dealt in facts and evidence, and answered honestly, I don't know. But I know that it knew things it shouldn't have known. And I know that every instinct I have, instincts that have kept me alive in situations where I should have died, tells me it was telling the truth. That's not evidence, Brennan countered. No. But it's what I believe. Dr. Mitchell had leaned forward then, her scientific detachment cracking slightly. Marcus, if you truly believe you're going to die tomorrow night, what will you do with the time you have left? It was a good question. Maybe the only question that mattered. I'd spent the drive home thinking about it. What does a man do with his last day? Visit family he'd pushed away? Make peace with old enemies? Write letters explaining everything to people who'd never believe him? Instead, I did something simpler. Something that felt right in a way I couldn't explain. I called my sister. Sarah answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Marcus. Hey, Sarah. Silence. 3 years of silence, compressed into a single pause. I'm sorry, I said. The words came easier than I expected. For not calling back. For missing your birthday. For being a ghost instead of a brother. Why now? Her voice was thick with emotion. It's been 3 years, Marcus. 3 years of nothing, and now you just call out of nowhere. Because I should have called 3 years ago. And 3 years before that. And every day in between. I stared out my apartment window at the ordinary street below, full of ordinary people living ordinary lives. I don't have a good excuse. I did bad things for people who convinced me they were good things, and it broke something inside me. I thought staying away would protect you from that. But I was wrong. She was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing. Are you okay? She asked. Are you in trouble? How did I answer that? I'm trying to do better. That's all any of us can do, right? Try to be better than we were yesterday. We talked for 2 hours. About her job as a teacher. About her husband Tom, who I'd never met. About their daughter, my niece, who was 5 years old and loved dinosaurs. Sarah sent me photos through text messages as we talked, and I stared at this little girl who shared my DNA and knew nothing about me. Will you come visit? Sarah asked as we were saying goodbye. For Thanksgiving, maybe. Emma would love to meet her uncle. I'd like that, I said, and meant it, even knowing what I knew. Especially knowing what I knew. After we hung up, I sat in the dark apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of the weight I'd been carrying. Like I'd set down a burden I'd forgotten I was holding. Then I looked at the clock. November 20th, 10:47 p.m. 25 hours until my predicted death. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wrote. Not a will. I'd had one of those since my first deployment. Not a confession. What I'd done for the agency would stay classified long after I was gone. Instead, I wrote letters to people I'd wronged. To people I'd hurt. To people who deserved apologies I'd never given. I wrote to Tom Henderson, whose brother I'd killed in a sanctioned operation that went wrong. I couldn't tell him how or why, that would stay classified, but I could tell him I was sorry. That his brother had been a good man who'd made bad choices, and that I thought about him often. I wrote to Father Miguel Cardoso in Guatemala. I couldn't explain what happened in his village, but I could tell him that I remembered every face. That I carried the weight. That I hoped his God was more forgiving than I deserved. I wrote to my parents, both gone now, but somehow the letters still needed writing. Thanking them. Apologizing for the son I'd become instead of the one they'd raised. And I wrote to the creature. To the being sitting in a cell 300 feet underground in Montana, waiting for whatever came next. I don't know if you'll ever read this, I wrote. I don't know if you can read, or if anyone would show you even if you could. But I need to say this, I believe you. Not because I want to. Not because it makes logical sense. But because you looked at me with eyes that have seen more than I can imagine, and you told me a truth that I felt in my bones. You said I'm not a good man. You're right. I've done things that would horrify most people. Things I convinced myself were necessary. Things I can't take back. But you also said I'm not the worst of my kind. And somehow, that meant more to me than any absolution I could have received from priests or therapists or the whiskey bottles I've been emptying for years. If you're right about the shape of things, about the path being set, then nothing I do in these final hours matters. But if there's even the smallest chance that choices matter, that we can bend the path even slightly, then I want my last choice to be this. I choose to believe that the time I have left, however long or short, can still mean something. I choose to believe that even predetermined paths can be walked with dignity. I choose to believe that knowing the ending doesn't erase the value of the journey. If I die tonight at 11:47, at least I'll die having said the things I should have said years ago. Having made peace where I could make it. having tried, in my last hours, to be the man I should have been all along. And if I'm still alive at 11:48, well, then I'll have learned something even more valuable, that the future isn't as fixed as it appears, that even beings with impossible knowledge can be wrong, that hope still has a place in a deterministic universe. Either way, thank you. For the warning. For the gift you said you were giving me. I didn't understand it at first. But I do now. The gift wasn't knowing when I'd die. The gift was knowing I had time to prepare. I sealed the letter in an envelope and addressed it to Dr. Mitchell at Site 17. Then I placed it on my desk next to all the others, arranged neatly for whoever would find them. The clock read 4:23 a.m. November 21st, 1995. My last day. Act 8. The shape of the choice. I spent the morning doing ordinary things with extraordinary attention. I made breakfast, eggs and toast, and tasted every bite. I showered and felt the water on my skin like it was the first time. I watched the sunrise through my window and saw colors I'd forgotten existed. Around 10 a.m., Raymond Chen called. I shouldn't be doing this, he said without preamble. But I've been thinking about what you're going through, and I had to ask. Are you okay? Define okay. Fair point. He paused. I've been reviewing the linguistic patterns again. The creature used very specific language when it described your death. Your heart will stop. Your breath will end. But then it said something else. It said the thing you call you will cease to exist in the form you understand. Marcus, what if that doesn't mean death? What if it means transformation? You're reaching, Raymond. Maybe. Or maybe I'm interpreting more accurately than we initially thought. Language matters. If it meant simple physical death, why add that qualifier? The form you understand. That suggests something more complex. Or it's just the way its species conceptualizes death. Don't torture yourself trying to find loopholes in prophecy. I've made my peace with it. Have you? Raymond's voice was gentle. Because I've known you for 6 years, and the Marcus Webb I knew never made peace with anything. He fought. He analyzed. He found angles and exploited weaknesses. Don't tell me you're just accepting this. What choice do I have? The same choice we all have. To decide what our last hours mean. He stopped suddenly. Wait. The creature said your death would come from a choice. Marcus, what if the choice isn't about avoiding death? What if it's about accepting it? What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe the prophecy is conditional. Maybe the you that dies tonight is the person you've been. The CIA operative who does terrible things and drinks to forget them. Maybe the choice is whether to let that person die and become someone different. It was an interesting interpretation. Almost poetic enough to believe. Thanks, Raymond. For trying. For what it's worth, I hope I'm right. I hope tomorrow morning I get a call from you telling me I'm a genius. If you do, I'll buy you the biggest celebration dinner you've ever had. We hung up, and I sat with his words. Transformation. The death of oneself and the birth of another. It was a comforting thought. The kind of thing people told themselves to make sense of prophecies and predictions. But deep down, I knew what the creature had meant. November 21st, 11:47 p.m. Physical death. The end. I spent the evening writing more letters. Making more calls. I spoke to Tom Henderson, though I couldn't tell him why I was suddenly reaching out. I donated money to Father Cardoso's church through an anonymous account. I arranged for the letters to be mailed after my death, whenever that came. At 10 p.m., I received an unexpected visit. Colonel Brennan stood at my door in civilian clothes, looking uncomfortable. Webb, can I come in? I let him in, noting the bottle of expensive scotch he carried. Figured you could use company tonight, he said. And before you ask, no, this isn't official. The agency doesn't know I'm here. This is just one operative to another. We sat in my small living room, and he poured 2 generous glasses. I've been in this business 30 years, Brennan said after a long drink. I've seen things that would break most people. Technology that shouldn't exist. Operations that rewrote history. Men who did impossible things in impossible situations. He looked at me. But I've never seen anything that shook me like watching you in that interrogation room. Watching that thing count down your remaining days. Why are you here, Colonel? Because I know what it's like to live with a clock ticking. Different kind of clock. Mine's cancer. Slow-moving but inevitable. Doctors give me 3 to 5 years. He smiled grimly. I didn't tell anyone at the agency. Can't afford to show weakness. But I know what it's like to count your remaining time. I'm sorry. Don't be. We all die, Webb. The only difference is some of us know approximately when. And I'll tell you what I've learned in the months since my diagnosis. It doesn't matter how much time you have. What matters is what you do with certainty. Meaning most people live like they're immortal. They put off apologies. They delay dreams. They accept misery because they think they have endless tomorrows to fix it. He refilled both glasses. But when you know your time is limited, you have clarity. You see what actually matters. You make different choices. The creature said my death would come from a choice. Then maybe the choice is whether you spend your last hour in fear or in peace. Brennan raised his glass. To making peace with the inevitable. We drank. At 11:30, Brennan left, clasping my shoulder in a gesture of respect that meant more than words. I was alone with 15 minutes remaining. At 11:42 p.m., I stood on my apartment balcony, watching the city lights stretch into the distance. 5 minutes. My heart was calm. No racing pulse. No panic. I'd said everything that needed saying. Made whatever peace was available to make. If this was my end, at least I'd spent my last day living like the man I should have been all along. The night air was cold. November in Virginia, winter approaching. I could see my breath. 4 minutes. I thought about the creature's words. The shape of events flows like water finding its path. Was this path inevitable? Had every choice I'd made, calling Sarah, writing the letters, letting Brennan visit, been predetermined? Or did knowing the endpoint give me the freedom to choose how I approached it? 3 minutes. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Good night, big brother. Love you. Can't wait for Thanksgiving. I smiled. If this was my last emotion, gratitude wasn't a bad one. 2 minutes. I checked my watch obsessively now. 11:45. The second hand sweeping around the face like a countdown timer. Each tick bringing me closer to the moment the creature had seen with its impossible perception. 1 minute. 11:46. I thought about all the interrogations I'd conducted. All the people I'd broken. All the information I'd extracted through means I justified as necessary. Had I been the villain in someone else's story? Probably. Almost certainly. But in the story of my last day, maybe I'd been something better. 30 seconds. My hands gripped the balcony railing. The metal was cold against my palms. Real. Solid. I was alive. Conscious. Present in this moment. 15 seconds. I closed my eyes. Waited for the heart attack, the aneurysm, whatever medical catastrophe would fulfill the prophecy. 10 seconds. Your heart will stop. Your breath will end. 5 seconds. The thing you call you will cease to exist in the form you understand. 11:47 p.m. I waited. My heart beat steadily in my chest. My lungs drew breath. The cold air bit at my skin. Nothing happened. Seconds passed. 5, 10, 15. 11 hours 47 minutes and 30 seconds. Still alive. I opened my eyes, looking at my watch in disbelief. Had I misread the time? Had I somehow? And then I understood. The choice. Not the choice to live or die. The choice of what happened next. Because standing there on that balcony at 11:47 p.m., very much alive, I was faced with a question that would define the rest of my existence. What did I do with this extra time? The creature had been right. At exactly 11:47, the Marcus Webb who walked into that facility, the operative who'd killed and tortured and drunk himself numb, that man had died. The Marcus Webb standing on this balcony was someone different. Someone who'd spent his last day making amends. Being vulnerable. Choosing connection over isolation. The prophecy hadn't failed. It had been exactly accurate. I had died at 11:47. And someone new had been born at 11:48. The choice, the one that would come from me, the one the creature had seen, was what I did with this realization. Did I return to my old life? Slip back into the comfortable patterns of violence and moral compromise? Or did I become someone else entirely? I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized but never called. Office of Personnel Management, Federal Employee Assistance Program. A bored voice answered. My name is Marcus Webb. CIA Operational Designation 77 Delta. I need to speak to someone about voluntary resignation and counseling services for post-traumatic stress. Hold, please. As I waited, I looked out at the city again. The same lights. The same buildings. But somehow everything looked different. Like I was seeing it through new eyes. Eyes that belonged to someone who'd been given a second chance. The line clicked. This is Dr. Simmons. Mr. Webb, I understand you're seeking assistance. Yes. I've done things I can't undo. But I want to stop doing them. I want to be better. That's a brave first step. Let's talk about what that means for you. We talked until after midnight. Made appointments. Discussed transition options. By the time I hung up, it was 12:47 a.m. November 22nd. A day I wasn't supposed to see. That was 29 years ago. A lot has happened since that night. I resigned from the agency in December 1995. Entered intensive therapy in January 1996. By March, I'd started volunteering at a veteran support center, helping other operatives transition out of dark work and into regular life. I never told anyone except my therapist about the creature and its prophecy. Who would believe it? And what would be the point? The non-disclosure agreements I'd signed ensured I'd face federal prosecution if I spoke publicly about Site-17. But I thought about it often. About the creature sitting in that cell, seeing the shape of events before they occurred. Knowing that I'd call Sarah. Knowing that I'd write letters. Knowing that at exactly 11:47 p.m. on November 21st, 1995, the person I'd been would cease to exist. It had been right about everything else, too. In June 1997, news leaked about a classified program to track and capture cryptids in the Pacific Northwest. 3 specimens were reportedly taken into custody over an 18-month period. 1 was killed resisting capture. 2 were held in undisclosed facilities for research purposes. The program was quietly shut down in 1998 after public outcry, though whether the captured specimens were released or remain in custody, no one outside the agency knows. The creature that predicted my death, the one I interrogated in that concrete room, I never learned what happened to it. Dr. Mitchell retired in 1999 and died of a stroke in 2003, taking whatever knowledge she had to her grave. Colonel Brennan succumbed to his cancer in 2001. Raymond Chen still works in linguistics but refuses to discuss his time at Site-17. I went to Thanksgiving dinner at Sarah's house in 1995, and every year since. Watched my niece Emma grow up. Walked her down the aisle at her wedding last spring. I'm married now too, to a woman named Jennifer who knows I used to work for the government and has the good sense not to ask for details. I've spent 29 years as a different person. Teaching. Counseling. Trying to balance the scales for the things I did before my death. But recently, something happened that reminded me why I'm recording this now. 2 weeks ago, I received a package. No return address. Postmarked from Montana. Inside was a single piece of paper, thick, handmade, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. And in the center, written in careful English. The shape of events flows like water finding its path. You chose the better path. Walk it well. Your second death comes when you are ready. When the time is right. When you have done what you came to do. The small one. The one with your sister's eyes. She will face a choice in 17 years. Be there to guide her. She will need the wisdom you earned. We remember the one who listened. We honor the one who changed. Few of your kind possess such strength. Walk in peace, Marcus Webb. Your ending is not yet written. There was no signature. But I knew. Somehow, impossibly, it was still watching. Still seeing the shape of things. And now I know that Emma, my niece, my goddaughter, the little girl who loved dinosaurs, will face her own crucial choice in 2041. She'll be 32. The same age I was when I walked into that facility. I don't know what the choice will be. I don't know how I'm supposed to guide her. But I know I have 17 years to prepare. To teach her what I learned. To help her understand that even when the path seems predetermined, how we walk it matters. The creature gave me a gift in 1995. The gift of knowing my time was limited, which taught me to use that time wisely. Now it's given me a second gift, a purpose. A reason to keep walking this path. To be there when someone I love faces her own moment of transformation. I'm 71 years old now. Every day is a gift I wasn't supposed to have. And if an impossible being that shouldn't exist is watching over my family, ensuring Emma has the guidance she'll need, well, that's terrifying and comforting in equal measure. I'm recording this because when I do finally die, my real, final death, Emma will need to know this story. She'll need to understand that choices matter. That knowledge can be a gift. That even beings we call monsters can offer grace. And she'll need to know that in November of 2041, when she faces whatever choice awaits her, she won't be alone. Because I'll be there. The creature saw it. I believe it. And I'll make sure that part of the shape comes true. Some prophecies are warnings. Some are promises. And some, the rare, precious ones, are both. If you're hearing this, Emma, it means I'm gone. It means you're approaching the moment the creature foresaw. I don't know what you'll be facing. I don't know what the choice will be. But I know this. You come from a line of people who survived impossible things. Your grandmother survived the war. Your mother survived poverty. And I survived the night I was supposed to die. When your moment comes, and it will come, remember that knowledge is power only if you use it wisely. Remember that prophecies don't have to be chains. They can be maps, guides, tools for navigation. And remember that even when the path seems set, you still choose how you walk it. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose like someone who knows that every moment is precious, because it is. I love you, Emma. I'm proud of the woman you've become. And whatever happens in the days ahead, know that the creature was right about one more thing. You are strong enough to face it. Walk in peace, little one. Walk in peace.